Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, a narcoleptic comedian, and this is a podcast where I interview people in my bed and we talk about sleep, comedy, and relationships. I'm happy to be part of the Laugh Factory podcast network. This is my 52nd episode. I can't believe I've been doing this for almost a whole year. I've had a whole 52 people in my bed for interviews. Actually, a little bit more because I had a couple where I had 2 people. So that's pretty crazy. This week, I interviewed Martin Morrow. Martin is a super talented performer. He does stand-up, he does sketch, he does improv, and you can catch him currently on the Second City Mainstage for the winner of our Discontent. You can also catch him on March 20th at Laugh Factory for Mondays with Morrow at 8 p.m. You can follow him on Twitter at Martin M. Morrow or visit his website, martinmorrowcomedy.com, for more upcoming dates. Sleeping with Sarah is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah to get a free audiobook of your choice. This week I'd like to recommend Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. Again, that's audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and rate and review on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and SoundCloud. Visit the website sleepingwithsarah.com for more info and follow me on Twitter at Sarah Albritton. Well, I'm excited to get started with this episode. We talk about the process with Second City. We talk about how he got into comedy. We talk about poetry. We talk about being a band geek, an awkward kid. And we talk about bombing in front of your idols. And we also talk about having a relationship that actually works. So we could all learn a little something from Martin here. So let's get started with the show. Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, and I'm here with my guest, Martin Morrow.
Hello.
How'd you sleep last night, Martin?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't think there was... I think I watched a little bit of the O.J. Simpson FX special, excuse me. Or what was that? The People versus O.J. Simpson.
Was that the... Oh, yeah, because it's on Netflix now, right?
Yeah. So I watched episode 4 of that and then went to bed.
Yeah,
that was pretty
sounds
much my
good. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah, pretty simple night.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So not up too late?
No, surprisingly. I usually stay up kind of late, so I think I packed it in around 1 last night.
Yeah.
1 a.m., yeah.
That's late for some people, but...
Yeah. Well, for me, like, if I'm up till 4 or 5, then that's, like...
What do you do when you stay up late? Do you, like, play video games? Are you, like...
Either write or play video games or, stuff like that.
Is it you get distracted?
I wouldn't even say video games. More like what's the, apps? I'm sort of...
Like silly little games?
Yeah.
Like Mario Run or some bullshit like that?
Yeah. I've been playing, for a while it was, Injustice. This, DC Comics, fighting game.
Are you a comic book person?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got an email from WWE. They were like, "We have a new game," and it was like basically Candy Crush but with wrestlers.
They're like, "We're gonna find out how to get everyone addicted to games."
Yeah. Well, at first I was like, "This is stupid," because I don't like those kinds of games. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm playing this every single day now." So that's my new addiction.
I think that they make it on purpose to be addicting. That's with everything. That's like sugar and candy and alcohol and everything, it's supposed to be addicting. But I totally have that problem too. I keep trying to delete apps so I'm not playing games. Mm-hmm. But now I have 2 apps that I'll play and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I spent money on it, so...
Oh, you actually spent...
I actually did.
So you invested in it.
So now I have to at least get the time out of it that I put in financially.
Yeah, see, I usually just do the ads. I'll watch all the ads to get whatever you need to get, but I don't... I bought Mario Run. I did buy that one, but I played that through a weekend, and I was like, okay, I got my $10 worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're you're doing a show at Second City right now, right?
Yeah, the winner of our Discontent Mainstage 105th review.
Awesome. That's pretty exciting. And how long has that been going for?
We started process in September of last year. And then it officially opened December 9th of 2016. So
from what I understand, the process is there's already an existing show, and then you start with a new group knowing the old show, and then you slowly substitute out different sketches until till it's a new show?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And all the people involved are also writers as well?
Yeah, all the cast is writer as well.
Do you guys have writers aside from that, or is it just...
No, just us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you kind of just play around with different ideas and see what works and what doesn't until you figure out the new one?
Yeah, you sort of figure out the perfect mold for whatever the underlying theme of the show might be. And typically the way it works too, or at least in this last process, because we were sort of in an election year, we had to change maybe 80% of our material after the Trump win.
Oh, wow. Were you writing material expecting for a different result?
Well, it wasn't even as much an expectation of a different result. It was just that our material was a lot lighter. Yeah. And so, like, there's certain scenes just wouldn't work the same, knowing the reality of a Trump win, and all of us weren't, particularly happy with that win. So
yeah, I feel like there definitely was, like, almost a palpable weight in the air, like, after that happened. It was just kind of a weird thing that affected comedy in all aspects, I think, that just people just had to figure out a way to deal with or handle, because it's a very odd thing. I mean, being in Chicago, we're a very liberal city, so that's, most people, go one way with it. But if you're like traveling to like smaller towns or things like that, I think it's definitely like a touchy subject.
Yeah. And
I know Second City has been known to be very political with a lot of the stuff, right?
Yeah, we work in satire.
Yeah.
That's a long-standing history of what we do, over 60 years of that. So
yeah. So I guess that does make a huge difference. So wait, so that's like from like November 8th till when did you guys open? December? We
opened December. So December 8th. Well, yeah.
So you had a month to like rewrite 80% of the show?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Was that like an intense process? Were you rewriting stuff all the time, or did it just kind of naturally happen?
Some of it came naturally. Some, some of it was just sort of about the moment of, living in a world, or that exact moment of, oh, this is like how everything's going to be now, So yeah, I mean, it was a little different, a little jarring. And then a lot of it also was, okay, what's some stuff we already have that we can like change just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not to say the show is like 100% political. We only, if anything, we have 30 scenes. Maybe 8 of those touch on politics or race or anything of that nature. But it's still like, it's still one of those things like it's looming. So
you have to address it.
We have to address it. Yeah.
You can't not address something like that when you're working at such a well-known place to be like political. Like people go there and expect something. So you guys have to comment on it, or at least the mood of it has to feel a certain way, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's awesome. And so you're still doing stand-up though, right? Like, do you miss doing stand-up, or do you like this prep?
I still do it, so I don't really miss what I do.
I guess I felt like when you first found out you got cast, you're like, oh, I probably won't be able to do stand-up for like a year.
Well, which is true. I didn't do it for like 2 months maybe.
Yeah.
I think I flew to LA on a Monday, and then like every now and then I'd pick up a Monday show. But like, I think the fluid difference being I was used to doing like, 10 to 12 stand-up shows a week, and now I might do it once a week.
Yeah.
If that, So I think that was sort of the big switch, if anything. And that's why it was very like jarring, because that was my life for the past like 3, 4, 5 years, since living in Chicago, just consistently doing stand-up every single night. So it was like a big switch to now I'm not doing that thing I've been doing every single day.
Yeah. Was like, did you miss it? Or, because I know some places, like I know with, Dark Side of the Moon, I know that they had some stand-up in that show, and that was a Second City show that went to DC, right? Yeah. Is there any stand-up that they incorporate into the show for you, or no?
Not necessarily. I had an idea. I didn't really get to pitch it, but where I would open the show doing stand-up, but we just never had time to really flesh it out. But I do have one like monologue piece that does have some elements of my stand-up in it, about Alabama, and I get to sort of make fun of different cities and stuff like that. So that's probably the closest thing to stand up. And then, and every now and then during the set, we'll have like special guests. Like we had, Maddie Ryan and Alex Cuban drop by. Baron Vaughn has also done it, Langston Kerman.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's been cool to like have my friends from Stand-Up be able to come in and.
So what do they, when you have a special guest, like what kind of things do they do? Are they in the show or do they write them in or do you?
So we did have Hannibal Buress was in the show. Like, I have a sketch where I play a wrestler, and I had him like walk with me, and people were like, "Is that Hannibal Buress?" Like, and then he didn't appear in any other part of the show. So that was like one of the coolest things I've done. But then for the set, we'll have them do like 5 minutes of stand up, and then we'll improvise based off of their stand up.
Oh, cool! Yeah. Oh, nice. So you still get to do some improv in there too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Well, that's really cool. It's cool that you got to do that. Like, that's like, I guess, like kind of a dream or goal when you first get to Chicago. You think Second City, Mainstage, and
yeah. Well, like Matty Ryan, who he grew up here, and he would he told me how when he was in high school he would sneak in to watch the set. So he was like overjoyed to be able to do that, and so it was really cool to have him up there, and he was incredible as he always is. Yeah,
he's awesome. Like, I think that's really cool. And which stage is it? Is it the ETC or the main stage?
The main stage.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And then how long do you guys do this show until it evolves into a new show?
This will probably run until like, I don't know, August, September, somewhere around there.
And is there ever like anything, like if anything big happens, do you ever like make a big adjustment to the show at any point or no?
Not necessarily. Sort of the way the show is designed is because I mean now it's like there's a new thing every single week that's happening.
It's almost too much. It's intense.
But fortunately we have like scenes where we asked for that type of stuff. Like, hey, what's something in the news right now that's important to you, and so they can call it out. So it's able to stay current due to that.
And then you're allowing the audience to pick instead of you guys picking for them, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, basically.
As well, because like the audience is like, this is what's on their mind.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about? I've been talking to a lot of comedians about this. Kind of curious about, because some people go to comedy to kind of get away and escape from what's going on in the world, and some people go to comedy to go to something that comments on it and brings light to it. So, what are your thoughts on these two different perspectives?
I mean, no one is wrong.
Yeah.
You sometimes you want to hear the truth, and you want to hear it from a different perspective. And I think humor is a great perspective of hearing the other side. And I consider myself a moderate, so I've grown tired of like the bleeding heart liberal of everything is sad, everything is downtrodden, everything is awful. This is the only way. But I grew up in Alabama where I've seen the hard right conservative side of like, no, this is right. This is justice. Everything else is wrong. God, no abortions. So which I like those people are insane. Well,
well, I grew up in Kentucky, but I grew up in a liberal city in Kentucky, and my parents have infamously always canceled each other out in elections. They both still vote, but they both always vote opposite. My mom's always Democrat, my dad's Republican. But he's a fiscal Republican, but he's socially liberal.
Yeah.
So like, but for me, like, because I don't really have any money, like for me, the social aspects of politics are much more important to me than the fiscal.
Yeah.
At this point in my life.
And I think too, the thing with money is that it's always going to go to the same place because they know the cycle of how to for them to stay fiscally sharp, and it's to keep everyone else poor, or at least fighting each other, thinking that, oh, this is the guy who's holding me back, but this is the guy who's holding me back. Whereas they're the ones who are profiting off of all of that. And so, yeah, so I was able to sort of like step outside of it and take notice of it. And I think that's helped my viewpoints on a lot of things politically and economically and socially. Especially like, in the past, 3 to 4 years, whatever.
Yeah, because you moved straight from Alabama to Chicago.
Well, I did. I was in Alabama. I grew up in Alabama. I moved to New York for a little bit in college.
New York City?
New York City, yeah. Interning at Ugly Betty. That's sort of where
That's fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I moved back to Alabama. Then I moved to Chicago.
Ugly Betty, how was that? You had fun with that?
I did, yeah. I interned and then did like a little bit of PA work for him.
Nice.
Yeah.
I remember that. I think, what show reminds me of that? You know what Jane the Virgin kind of reminds me of that show, because I think they're both based on like telenovelas. Mm-hmm. Which I think's like interesting. Except Jane the Virgin like definitely hits you over the head, like letting you know it's a telenovela. So it's like, hey, expect crazy shit to happen all the time, and that's part of the genre. But I always thought that was like a fun, bright, kind of silly show. I liked it.
Yeah.
And so, what'd you do for them? Did you like intern in the writing aspect or PA or?
I started off in sort of the writer's room, and I would like just basically print off scripts or you know put in food orders, stuff like that. And then I got to work on set a little bit as well.
That's cool. So you got to kind of see how a writer's room works and operates.
Yeah.
That's something that's really of interest to me right now. I'm like, I want to see how it all works, how quickly you have to get the script together for the show and all that. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, and so then you moved to Chicago.
January 3rd, 2011.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, like it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
And you just hit the ground running with stand-up, or were you doing stand-up before?
I'd been doing stand-up before. So before that, I was doing stand-up. I started in Auburn when I was like 18 years old, I believe.
Gotcha.
Doing open mics and stuff like that. And then when I turned 21, I got more serious about it.
Well, then you can go to more bars to do more comedy.
Exactly, yeah.
I feel so jealous of these kids that are like 18 that I see like when I'm performing in like, you know, like MCL or, you know, like these smaller venues that don't require, they don't have a bar, so you don't have to be 21. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's why I haven't seen you around, because you're not old enough to go to all the mics and shows at the bars.
Yeah, they're very, very fortunate.
But I'm like so jealous. I'm like, I wish I had discovered stand-up earlier. I had discovered improv at that time, but not stand-up. So there's just kind of that difference. And how'd you get into improv then? Did you do it all at once?
Yeah, so when I was 20 maybe. I started doing theater in college as well. I got serious about theater, and then this guy Christopher Davis, who was sort of one of my mentors in stand up, also was part of this improv group. And they had been together they'd all known each other for like 10 years and performed together for like 10 years. And I went to one of their shows. I was like, these guys are amazing. Like I want to do this. And so they let me audition, and I did like a monologue from the show I was doing, and just played some scenes with them and sort of remembered like the basic improv rules, and they let me in. I was very surprised.
You're like, I didn't think I did that good. It's always
I felt I did good, but I was also like, I knew like two of them, and was the youngest person in this group. And so I think that really shaped for me a lot of my reference levels, and because it, you know, like I said, all of them were like 10 years older than me. I think I was 20, 21 at the time. And they would talk about a TV show from, you know, 1984, and they all would know about it.
And so you had no idea.
I had no idea. So then I would go home and like research what is this thing, and then, you know, I'd be sort of up on the loop.
This is how I feel about some of these people, and like, I don't feel old, but it's like, I met somebody the other night, and he was born in 1998, and he's doing stand-up, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I gotta see. Wait, I like your purple socks, man.
Oh,
so what are they, tigers?
Yeah, I got these in New Orleans.
When did you go to? I like New Orleans.
When was that? Sometime last year. I forgot. I think I was there for a show or something. No, we were at Second City. We were in like Baton Rouge, and then we drove to New Orleans. And
New Orleans is so fun, like, because it's just such a chill town, and it's like, hey, like, you can drink in the street, no big deal. We're just gonna, and everybody, like, because I knew a couple locals there, so they're like, hey, you can tell like a local from a tourist, because the locals like will literally look everyone in the eye and say hello, like, and mean it, and not just be, which is so different than like city life where everyone's like looking down, ignoring everybody else. Yeah. So it's just kind of a cool atmosphere. Yeah. But it reminded me of Savannah.
Yeah, New Orleans is probably my favorite stand-up town.
Oh, for stand-up, yeah. That's all. I did like a couple things. I was like less than a year in when I went to New Orleans last, but yeah, I know a couple people. There's a couple cool like storytelling shows and some other weird like variety show stuff, which I like. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Do you feel like you're going to be in Chicago for a while now because of the Second City? Or are you wanting to?
I don't know. What I've always said is I'm here now. And if something picks up, I don't want to be one of those people who just like moves for the sake of moving. And I do think that everyone sort of has their time limit. But I at least have comfort here in Chicago, to where I'm not like, to where like if my end all be all goal is to be famous or, you know, write for such and such TV show or act on such and such TV show, I know that's an option. I feel like if I went out to one of the coasts, I could do it. I probably should have capitalized on it a year ago. I probably should capitalize on it a year from now, but I don't know. You know, you really can't tell what would happen.
It is kind of a crapshoot, because sometimes people are like, oh, like, you got to be out here to do this, but then I know people that are getting hired to go do shows, and like they have like a week to move, and I'm like, well, they were able to like live here until they got a job, so how does it work, you know? So
yeah, I think it's entirely possible, and I enjoy the work I do at Second City. You know, I taught there before. I'm gonna start teaching again. I have like a new class called Turning Stand-Up into Sketch. It starts next month.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, because the one thing I do like about doing the different formats, like writing sketch, writing, you know, pilots, writing, you know, stand-up, is that, like, if a joke might not work on stage for stand-up, it might be a good premise for a sketch or something else. And I've definitely done that. So I think that's a cool class.
Yeah.
That's fun.
I enjoy teaching and doing stuff like that. And I've said before, I want to get into, like, producing and directing and writing and stuff like that. Or even, like, maybe down the line, working as an agent or manager. But also love the performance aspect of everything and creating. So yeah, I'm fine either way. You know, I ideally, I would love to move, but move because someone wants me to move.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Someone's calling you up, be like, hey, you need to get over here. We got something for you.
Yeah. Get the call up.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's cool. And, yeah, that's pretty cool. So wait, directing then, would you want to direct film stuff?
Yeah, film, or both really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm sure you got a lot of like ideas in your back pocket of things you want to work on or see or take crazy characters like Farty Marty or something. Well, that's just a silly one. But how'd you come up with him?
So Danny Callis and I used to live together, in Lincoln Park, and the guy who lived there before us, Charlie Beery, who's another funny stand-up, I think he lives in LA now. He left behind all these DVDs of like, here's the best comics from the 90s, right? So they in one of the DVDs, me and Danny had a day off and we were just watching it, and it had previews, and one of the previews was just like, here are the best comics from such and such, and it was like hamburger and shucky ducky go quack quack, like all those you know, 90s staples who had like, they had that set catchphrase. And I was like, oh, I should do something like, I would love to do a character like that. And he's like, yeah, you should. And so we came up with like Farty Marty go toot toot from that. And I think I did a show later that night, and I just randomly said it. And I was like, okay, that was stupid. And I explained it to them. And then when I explained it, they were like, that's kind of funny, but you just saying it randomly as yourself makes no sense. So then I forgot what show I did initially with it. Or I think I did like Cole's open mic with it. And it worked really well. And then, like a lot of like it became like the comics sort of bit.
Yeah.
Where other comics loved it. And so then I got like Entertaining Julia, we did it there, and this Senorita Wiener, which is like Junior and Lebo's old show. We did it there, and like a few other spots we just started doing it. But it got to the point where people only wanted me to do Farty Marty. And I was like, oh, okay, I gotta like hit the reset button.
You gotta stop it on that, because if people start requesting it, then you can't work on your other shit you want to do.
Yeah.
Because when you would go up with a character, you would just do the character the whole time and not do stand up as yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how it usually works. Do you have other characters that you like to pull out, or just the?
Farty Marty's like the main one. I tried a few other characters for a little bit. I had some karate guy I tried once. Marson and the FYF crew, like rap group. That's probably the thing I've done the most, and it's been around the longest, because I was doing that before I even moved to Chicago.
No wrestling ones, because I know you're a wrestling fan, right?
Yeah, no wrestling characters. I had a guy in New York that I did called Mr. Chocolate 2010 Rondell Sky, who was basically a guy who did he competed in like essentially like a male pageant, like a male beauty pageant. And it was just him, and his talent portion was doing stand-up, so it was just him doing stand-up again.
Oh my gosh, I wonder, like, that makes me wonder, like, if there's, like, people in beauty pageants that, like, also do stand-up as their as their act. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Logic with a Q, that was a character I did for a little bit. He was like a poet, but but all of his poems are terrible. I think that might be all the characters I've ever done.
Wow.
I'm sure there are some other ones.
You were able to list that off pretty easily. That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. The poetry thing, that's interesting too. Have you ever been to the Green Mill, like poetry slam or any of that?
I'm not. I started off when I was in high school, I would write poetry. Like that was my way.
Teenaged angsty poetry, or was it cooler than that?
Yeah, if I had a crush on a girl, I would write a poem for her.
And you give it to her?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, but it never worked.
It never worked.
Never worked. They were good poems though. Like,
do you still have copies of them?
I don't. They're in a notebook somewhere, so I'd have to like really dig. I'm sure I could find them if I went home.
Oh, I'm sorry, that would be fun. Like, if you, like, read that out at a show sometime, like the old poems.
Oh, of course, yeah. And then when I went to college, I transitioned into, like, writing music, like, lyrics and stuff. But I couldn't, like, play piano or guitar, so I would just write songs and then would try to keep reminding myself what it was supposed to sound like. And then from there, I transitioned into comedy.
Gotcha.
I was like, okay, how can I move this into something different?
Went from music to comedy. Nice.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the girls though. What was like the best or worst response you got from the poems?
I mean, it was always just like, oh, that was sweet, like that. Like
it was always that.
Yeah, because I would aim very high, like.
Oh, you aimed for like the girls that would.
and I wasn't. I was like a band geek but I was also like dumb. Like we were all in like remedial math together, so I wasn't even like a smart band geek. I was like the dumb band geek who was just good. I was really good at playing trombone, but I couldn't hold a social, like, conversation. The fact that I would say social conversation, that can tell you.
So you were awkward as a kid.
I was very awkward. I'm still kind of awkward, but as a kid, it was like. I
feel like a lot of comedians are, but I think we're more forgiving of each other because we kind of understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be something like off about us if we go up on stage and share our most personal stuff to strangers every night, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a bit more, oddly more accepting, which is kind of nice. But you don't seem like that, you know what I mean? I feel like you're not, I feel like you're pretty socially adjusted now, so.
To an extent, I feel like I can, when I need to, I can put on or I can be fine. And I think it was just a little bit of growing up.
Yeah. Or you don't have to, like, turn it on all the time or any of that.
Yeah.
Well, that was the problem I had when I started stand-up. I was used to playing characters, and I was like, oh, if I'm doing improv or sketch, it's great, because it's not me. So if they're not laughing or they don't find it interesting, then it's not rejecting me. Yeah. But when you're doing stand-up, it's way more personal.
Yeah. You can ask, like, when I moved here, especially, like, Matt Riggs or Lane Pichelle or Sam Norton, they used to give me grief because they were like, we don't know who we're talking to with Martin, because I would just do voices and stuff like that, and they'd be like, you're not in a bit right now. So that was just always a fun back and forth of them busting my balls for essentially doing for me it was like, oh, I'm just interacting with other comedians. For them it's like, you're weird, why are you doing this?
So you would never turn off when you got off stage? You would still be in a bit or a character?
It wouldn't even be like that, because I wouldn't, I wasn't like doing characters on stage. I would just come off and or not even be on stage. We'd just be hanging out, and I would start doing an accent out of nowhere, talking weird.
I went to school for theater, and there is a lot of people that would randomly, there was this one guy that spoke in an Irish accent for a whole semester, and he wasn't Irish at all. He was just doing it. Just to do it. And it was very odd. Like, there's a lot of people that do that kind of thing. So, because you were also doing improv, did you find that you felt like one was like, I feel like you felt stand-up was stronger than the other stuff? Or was it just because you could do stand-up every night versus improv?
Yeah, I felt equally strong in both realms. If I didn't, I would have stopped doing one of them. But I think there were just more opportunities there are more free opportunities to stand up. Whereas like with improv, it's like, pay this amount to do this class. If you want to see this show, you got to pay this much. So it was a lot of like, my focus when I came to Chicago, I came here to do stand up, be great at stand up, and do Second City. So I didn't take any classes at IO. I didn't take any classes at Annoyance. I think I did a little bit of comedy sports, cause I was with 100 Proof for a bit.
So you're Second City guy through and through. So did you go through like A through E and then conservatory?
Because I did theater in college.
You did
I did
actors.
Yeah, improv for actors, 1 and 2. And then I did conservatory. I did dramatic acting. I did, 1 writing 6 show. I did like 6, they call them urban twists now, but like brown coast, binge coast, stuff like that.
Did you do the boat at all?
Didn't do a boat. No. I auditioned to do stand up on a boat. But I think, I got sick that day, so I threw up in the shower on the way over there.
Oh.
Yeah. And
before an audition, but you were not out of nerves just because you weren't feeling well.
I just wasn't feeling well. Yeah. And then I did 45 minutes of material. It had to be 45 minutes of just material. And, I, like, halfway through, I think like 30 minutes in, I was like, I gotta be done now, right? And I still had like 15 minutes to go. I was like, all right, well, I know the closer I got to get to. I'm trying to do this without checking notes. And I know how like ships operate. So I was like, okay, well, I got to be like somewhat clean. But like the first 30 minutes was like all my tried and true clean stuff. So then I went blue for like, 10 minutes. And then like closed out with, I think the R&B joke was the one I was doing at the time. And that was it. And I didn't get the boat. I was like, oh, that sucks. But I got other opportunities from it, which sort of worked out. So,
do you feel like when you do longer sets, it's harder to keep track of time, like figure out like where you're at?
Only when it's a longer set that matters, if that makes any sense.
Like if it doesn't matter, you can be fucking with the crowd, you can chill out, like take your time. But if it's got to be a timed audition type thing, then it matters. Because
like last year, I recorded a set to submit to Comedy Central Half Hour. And again, I got, for some reason I always get sick before anytime I have to record a set or do something longer than 20 minutes. And I went under on time. I think I went like 27 minutes on a half hour submission. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And now I'm starting to think about all the jokes I didn't do. And so I ended up not sending it in. And then like this year, I went 37. I think I went 37 minutes.
So but that's too long.
But I mean, you could still send it in, but I just wasn't happy with the tape, so I didn't send it in.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like, yeah, you got to have the exact. They're so timed out, you know. Which is why I kind of like the Netflix stuff that they're doing, because Netflix, you don't have a time limit. It doesn't have to fit tightly in between the commercials and stuff like that. So I like that they're doing more and more stand up and all that, which is really cool and interesting. But yeah, I mean, clearly Comedy Central Half Hour, that's a dream for a lot of people. So that's a pretty cool thing to try to submit for. But yeah, do you adjust how much how clean you have to be, or how like?
For that one I did. And I think that for this last round, cause for a bit I'd been closing with the Katt Williams joke. Mm-hmm. And it was I like that. So yeah, I like it too. But
I like that joke because you're admitting like a time where it didn't work that well for you. Yeah. And like you turn that into a joke that works really well, which I like.
But it's a dirty joke. And the note I got going into it was like, hey, you have to clean that. You can't do that joke. And I was like, but I love doing that joke. So I tried to clean it up like on the spot while doing it. It just didn't register as much as it usually does. So I think if I'm assuming I submit again next year or actually send the tape in, I think I'll just do the joke the way I want to do it. I'll do the material the way I want to do it. I'm not going to like worry about last minute adjustments or getting sick. I'm just going to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, like I said, I did. I remember hearing that joke for the first time. I was like really surprised. I was like, oh wow, like 7,000 people or whatever. Like that's a lot. And like first of all, to go through that, like, and then like, I feel like a lot of people that open for bigger names or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, I open for this. There's pictures all over. They put it on Facebook and that's great and everything. And, but then like, you never hear about if it doesn't go that well. And I think that was a really cool thing you did, was like admitting, hey, you know, this is the crowd I was dealing with. This is who they thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what happened. And I think that was a really cool, you don't see that a lot because especially I think a lot of people are ego-based, you know, in the industry. So I feel like a lot of people don't admit their failures or when things don't work. So I thought that was a really cool thing that you don't see as much, you know?
Yeah, I think it's good to open up about your failures and open up about your mistakes and stuff like that. And I think, I'll agree. It is, I would say, maybe to an extent ego-driven or just like, oh, if I talk about this thing, then people won't want to book me or whatever. But you know, that was a turning point. That was a highlight. I was excited to do the show, and I still got paid. So at the end of the day,
well, and you ended up getting a great joke out of it. Yeah. So like, I still think it's a win. Yeah. Like, I don't think of it like some people could have looked at that and been like, oh, that set didn't go well. I got paid and never mention it again, but you turned it into a joke that works, and now it's a thing that's a part of your history, which is cool. Yeah,
I got to meet Katt Williams. Like, that was the coolest. He was so cool. And like, that's a dude I watched in movies and I have all of his DVDs. I was like, hell yeah, I don't mind bombing for Katt. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah. I guess if you think about that, you'd be happy to bomb for numbers of different people that you admire just to be around them, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I get paid $600 for it, sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good amount of money. That's nice. So another thing we talk about a little bit is relationships a little bit. Are you single right now?
I'm not, no.
You're not? You got a girlfriend.
You've met her.
You must have been with her for a while, right? Yeah. How long have you been together?
Gosh, it'll be 2 years this summer.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And she a performer too?
She is. She does improv, sketch, storytelling, and now stand-up. She started doing stand-up.
Oh, she started doing stand-up. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So she's Jill of all trades, you know, kind of like you are, like doing sketch, improv, stand-up, all of it.
Yeah.
I talk a lot on the show about how interesting I think it is how performers tend to gravitate toward other performers, just about like the understanding or the late nights or the schedule and all of that. And you find that, I guess that works for you guys.
Yeah. Because she works a day job too. So that's that if anything's like difficult is that she has early mornings on top of the late nights and stuff. But I mean, we've made it work and we met at a show. She was doing storytelling. I was doing stand-up. That was like right before My Last Comic Standing was about to come out. So I was very like, why would you put a storyteller after a stand-up? And I sat and watched her and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's really good. And I talked to her afterwards and then became Facebook friends and all that stuff. And sort of
went from there. Was it a serious story or a funny story?
It was like it was a funny story.
Yeah.
Like a little mix of both, sort of about like confidence and building herself up to she went to Brown University.
Oh, wow.
And so they was talking about going to a party at Brown, basically.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. I do like about storytelling is I feel like you get to take your time more and you don't have to be funny every line.
Yeah.
Versus stand-up, I feel like you have to get X amount of laughs per minute. You know, like you feel that kind of... Unless you're doing like a long extended set, you know, where you can take your time a little bit more. But that's what I've always appreciated, like people like Mike Birbiglia who have that great way to combine the storytelling and the stand-up together, like in a great way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. So did you ask her out first then?
Yeah, I invited.
Or was it, hey, let's hang out?
Well, it was one of those things of like, I wasn't newly single, but I was like single and sort of like bopping around. And so I invited her to a show and then she got there late. And so I was just sort of like in my own zone of doing stuff. And then I think we left separately. So it didn't seem like anything was going to come from it. And then, like maybe a month later, she hit me up and was like, hey, you want to go out? Like she asked me out on a date. And I was like, whoa, that is progressive. And, so I was like, yeah, sure. So we went out for drinks and stuff and hung out and, she had her first pineapple vodka, or vodka pineapple rather. And then I showed her I just bought underwear because I showed up there late.
You had just explain the underwear thing.
So I like to buy I like weird colorful special underwear.
Like your socks?
Like my socks, yeah.
Okay.
And so I got like Simpsons underwear with all the Simpsons characters on it. I forgot the other two. I think one with like a bunch of cats or something like that. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. I just got all this cool underwear. And that was the gist of it. But yeah, and then we just kept hanging out from there. And,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever put her in any of your bits? Or she felt odd about that? Or is that fine?
You know, I always find it weird when performers are like, the fucking girlfriend, you know, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I love her, so I don't have a need to, there's like nothing in our relationship that I'm like, oh, I gotta talk about this.
Because it's a good working relationship, so
there's like nothing, not to say there's nothing, we have fun and we're funny together, but there's nothing funny about being like, yeah, this is fun, this is good.
Yeah, so it's not like a dysfunctional thing where you're talking about it on stage, but you just feel like it's good, so there's no reason to talk about it. It's not like you're having arguments left and right or anything. No. That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool when you get to that point where you're like, hey, like, this is really working, and I don't really have problems to talk about on stage because I don't have problems with this going on. So
yeah, like, her family's cool. Like, there's nothing... There's, like, I've had past relationships... I'll talk more about past relationships or past hookups than anything, because those are the stories where I'm like, this is bizarre. But there's, like, nothing out of the norm from it. So it's just like, oh, this is, like, a fun, good relationship. So there's, you know...
That's so nice to hear. I'm happy for you that you're in such a healthy relationship. Like, I feel like a lot of times comics aren't fortunate enough to get that, I guess. Or we're just messed up enough that we screw up our own relationships. I don't know.
Probably. Maybe both.
Do you ever feel like you have to change your material to make it sound like you're... Because I feel like some comics, I've seen this happen, where they're in a relationship, but they want to do older material, so they sound like they're single on stage.
I don't think so. No. I don't really... I don't really necessarily go to a specific binary of if I'm single or in a relationship or whatever. Every now and then I'll bring up I'm in a relationship, but that's only if I need like a specific avenue. But I usually, I also date my material. So if I'm like, oh, this happened October of 2013 or whatever, in terms of like telling stories.
So you say like, hey, this happened a few years ago.
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, this happened last week, even though because a lot of people do that too.
Yeah.
Make it sound more recent, which I've been guilty of too, but nothing, usually if it's in less than a year. If it's more than a year, then I'll date it, I guess. But yeah, I think that's good. That's pretty upfront, honest about all that. That's awesome, man. I'm glad that things are going well. And so I take it you might move, if you guys did move, she does performing too, so she probably would want to move to the coast too. So
I mean, I think she's happy here, and she's sort of found her footing in doing a lot of great things here.
Chicago's a great place to do things and create things, and I've been thinking about that. I was like, well, like, I know there's not as much industry here, you know, and I mean, there's good commercial industry, I guess, and then there's like, you know, that CISO show that filmed and that's cool, but I wonder if maybe the reason Chicago is so great to create things is because there is an industry here, and we can take those risks and we can create that weird stuff without being watched by all the important people that can make or break your career.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's just kind of my thoughts on that. But I don't know, like, what do you think? Do you think that Chicago would be better with more industry, or do you like it?
I do think it'd be great with more industry. Yeah. I mean, you could say that about any, like Montana, I'm sure would have a better place with more industry. Yeah, I think it's cool that we do, you know, like you mentioned, I think Shrink on CISO is what you're referring to.
I couldn't think of the name. I knew it was about a psych. I wanted to say Psych, but I was like, no, that's a different show.
On USA. I think we're in 6 seasons.
Well, what I liked about Shrink is that's the first, because Chicago has a lot of things that are filming. It's great, but they're all dramas.
Chicago PD.
Chicago Med, I think Chicago Law.
Chicago Justice, I think is what it's called, yeah.
But I think, like, all those are dramas, and Shameless is great. But, like, what I was happy to hear about when Shrink filmed here is, like, oh, it's a comedy that's being filmed here. Because almost always comedies that are set in Chicago are filmed in LA.
Yeah, and that's Tim Baltz and Ted Trimper, who created Shrink, they started it here. And so I think it is cool that they wanted to bring the roots back here, despite all the great work they're doing, you know, in LA and New York, respectively. And so I thought it was real cool of them to do that, to find those roots grounded here.
I do too, and I hope that more of that stuff comes to Chicago to give people the opportunity to like participate more in that. Like I said, I think so many good things are created here, and it's cool to see things, even like things like Teachers, even though they filmed that in LA, they did the web series here. They were an improv group here for years, Katie did. I love it. I know, Katie Colladon. So, but it's just a really cool thing to see them create that thing here. And even though they had to go to LA, they still like created it, started it, built it here. Yeah. And I feel like that happens with a lot of things, or even like, even over time, like if you even look at like Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch were in, Second City Reviews together before they went on to SNL. And Amy Poehler and Matt Besser and all the UCB people also started here together. So I feel like a lot of the comedy that's grown from the coast have kind of come from other people. Yeah. And who do you look up to most? Like who's somebody you would love to work with in terms of the comedy world?
I think in a long-term aspect, Adam McKay is probably one of my favorite writers and directors. Donald Glover also, I think, is an amazing creator and artist. And
also seeing him do more serious stuff too with Atlanta. And I haven't seen it yet, but sorry, I want to make a comment on like Jordan Peele. Like I haven't seen his new movie yet.
Well, it comes out on the 24th.
Oh, okay, that's why I haven't seen it. But like people coming from comedy and then doing something very serious. I kind of love that that's becoming more of a norm and not as unexpected and not like, hey, because I know Donald Glover does that with Atlanta, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Short term, I guess, Baron Vaughn is someone I look up to. I would love to collaborate with him. Eric Andre, Roy Wood Jr., I think is probably the best stand-up out right now. Locally or more so in my like grouping, Chris Redd is easily one of my best friends in the whole world. And we've created stuff together for the Second City Network, and we've done like live shows together and improv and stand up and written together and stuff like that. So I'm proud to see him blowing up and doing cool things on, like, he's got a show coming out on Netflix, and
I know, I'm so excited for him.
Yeah, so I would love to collaborate with him. From our show right now, Jameson Webb, I think, is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. I would love to do, work on some sort of project with him. Three-peat, my improv group at where we started at IO. We've shot a shot a sizzle reel, and we always communicate and write and collaborate and send each other stuff. So this is another group that.
And you've had Chance come by there too, right?
Yeah, Chance come by. We had Vic Mensa come by. A lot of cool people.
That's really awesome. Yeah. Sounds like you're doing like a lot of cool things. I no doubt that you'll get to a lot of those people on those lists.
Yeah, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening to Sleeping with Sarah, where I slept with Martin Morrow. You can follow Martin on Twitter at Martin M. Morrow and catch him at the winner of our Discontent at Second City Mainstage. This podcast is part of the Laugh Factory Podcast Network. Please remember to subscribe and rate and review on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and SoundCloud. We're brought to you by Audible.com. Please go to audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah. I'm releasing a new podcast each week. Be sure to tune in to find out who I have in bed with me next. Thanks to Josh Bryant for the music. You can find out more on sleepingwithsarah.com. And please follow me on Twitter at Sarah Albritton. Until next time, good night.
Sleeping with Sarah.